Howdy folks, and welcome to Greedfall, developed by Spiders, the developers of Technomancer, Bound by Flame, and Mars Warlogs. Brand new game. I mentioned that it was coming out in last week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. It was released yesterday. As such, don't really expect this to be a review. The game's only been out a day. I've played 7 hours, so this is really more of a first impressions than a review. Now, based on the clothing, technology, fashions, architecture, and mannerisms of speech, you could be very easily forgiven for thinking that this was an historical game set in the mid-17th century. However, as is the case with a game like The Witcher, which on the surface at least appears to be set in 16th century Europe but is in fact set in its own fantasy world, Greedfall is also set in a fantasy world that merely resembles 17th century Europe, a fantasy world that is being ravaged by a deadly plague.
What is this? Have you not been taught to knock? I've asked 1,000 times. Oh, it's you, my dear child.
Mother, I'm sorry. I'm having trouble getting used to your condition.
Come now, let's speak of more pleasant things. I'm so very happy to hear your voice. You remind me so much of your father. I do miss him so. Today is the big day, isn't it? Ready to set sail for that island everyone's talking about.
Yes, but the idea of leaving you behind, alone and ill...
Dying, my child. Alas, there is nothing you can do by staying that would ease my suffering. One thing brings me cheer. They say the island is full of miracles, and we might find a cure.
Even if I were to find it, I would never be able to return in time to...
I know. But it brings me comfort to know my son has left on a mission to heal his people. Come now. It is time for you to take leave. Here, take this with you.
What is it?
A family heirloom. Something that... Take it and keep it with you. May it bring you good luck. All my blessings go with you, my child. Now, be off.
And so the stage is set for Greedfall. The world is in the grip of a deadly plague, but a new island has been discovered, which may hold the promise of a cure. And if a cure can't be found, well, having all of that land with its abundance of natural resources to exploit certainly wouldn't hurt. Now, if at this point you're thinking, hang on a second, this sounds awfully like what happened to the Americas when the European colonists arrive. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And I suspect that that's entirely deliberate. And in case you're wondering where exactly the developers' sympathies lie, well, just look at the title. It's not called Landfall now, is it? I mean... So, there's that. And yet, the character that you play is one of these European colonialists, tasked with representing the merchants of the city of Serene, the city in which you start the game, upon arrival in the New World, a journey by sea that's going to take a couple of months. Before you embark, however, in true adventure game fashion, there are just a couple of errands that you need to run. The Merchants' Congregation of Serene are not the only faction with interests in the New World. The city of Serene also hosts the embassies and ambassadors of the Bridge Alliance and the Theocracy of Telemi, another two factions that you will have ample opportunity to piss off as you play further into the game. Technically, you could say that there is also a fourth faction, the native indigenous people of the New World, but they don't have their own flag, so they don't count. No, don't look at me like that. I didn't make up the rules, Eddie Izzard did. It's a well-known historical fact that Britain created an empire that spanned a quarter of the globe by the cunning use of flags, sailing up to parts of the world that nobody had discovered, except for the native indigenous people who'd lived there for thousands of years, and claimed it in the name of whoever happened to be occupying the throne at the time, by the simple expedient of sticking a flag in the ground. Native people didn't have their own flags. No flag, no country. Those are the rules. So what do we have to do to actually get this game moving along? Well, there are a couple of impediments to our imminent departure. We have to check in with the ambassadors of the various other factions that also have interests in the New World. We have to introduce ourselves to the captain of our ship, ensure that all of the necessary supplies have been paid for and loaded on board the ship. And then we have to find our cousin Constantine, who was last seen drinking himself senseless at a tavern in the Port District. Now, this wouldn't normally be a problem, and is in fact quite normal behaviour for cousin Constantine. He's the youngest idiot son of my uncle, and nobody really takes him seriously, except today of all days he's supposed to be setting sail with us to the New World, where, upon arrival, he'll be taken on the role of Governor of the New World, or at least Governor of all the parts that the city of Serene has laid claim to. So I suppose I should probably find him. I mean, I don't know why it's my responsibility, but when you turn up without your governor, people do tend to notice.
If you had any idea who I am... Open up, imbeciles! I have a ship to catch!
That vulture of a tavern master was right. It is Constantine's voice. It's coming from the floor above.
It sounds as if he's locked up.
And I have a feeling they're expecting company. Be careful. The slightest itchy word to these brutes will have them drawing blades to scratch it.
Negotiation may be the solution. As you say, this breed of brutes won't spit on ransom money.
What a waste. I'd rather sneak around them than give half a coin to these seedy fellows.
All of which is the game's way of telling you that you have multiple different approaches that can work here. You can pay them off, you can just kick the door in, say, "We've come for the idiot," and cut down anybody who looks at you funny. Or you can try to sneak your way in. In fact, there's more than one way to sneak your way in, although one of those methods is substantially more sneaky than the other one. If you've invested any points into the science skill, for example, you can use alchemy to craft small explosive charges, basically breaching charges, to blast your way through light wooden walls, like this one. Not terribly subtle, I admit, but hey, it works. And so pretty soon, assuming all goes well, whether or not you had to cut your way through his kidnappers or not, you should find yourself in the position of being able to liberate your long lost, well, since last night at least, cousin Constantine.
Well, this has been monumentous, gentlemen, but I have more important things to attend to.
Yes, they did lock him up with his sword. No, his kidnappers weren't the sharpest tools in the box either.
And a demanding father.
And yes, the man who was locked up with a sword did just try to murder his own cousin when he came to rescue him with a wine bottle.
We're departing soon.
And this is the guy who's been named as Governor of the New World. One cannot help but think that my darling uncle, the man who sired this nebulous cretin upon the world, isn't perhaps taking the possibilities for riches afforded by the New World seriously if this incompetent twit is the best candidate that he can come up with to be its new governor. Or it's possible, by the magic of genetics, that my uncle is as big a dribbling idiot as the buffoon he's put in charge of me for the next couple of years of my life. There is a lot more of this sort of thing. There's actually a couple of hours worth of this sort of thing if you choose to exhaust all of the quest options, and you'd be recommended to do so because you'll gain a lot of experience and reputation with the various different factions before embarking on your ship for your journey to the New World. Actually, it's not called the New World in the game, although that's heavily implied. The name of the island is Tier 3D. And the reason why everybody seems so sure that they're going to be able to find a cure for the Malachor, which is the name of the plague that's been ravaging the old world, is because there's some pretty powerful magics in them thar native hills.
The beast is awoken!
Those conniving, piss-distilling, bridge-building liars. The creature was supposed to be out for days. They'll pay for this.
What the hell manner of cargo are you transporting?
Help! We need ropes! We must contain it! Help!
Come now, let's lend them a hand.
Yeah, let's not. Idiot cousin. Move, maybe? Or just cower there and be squashed by a bug?
Watch out!
Your call.
Take a step back, sir!
Cut! Captain! Keep my cousin safe!
Now that is basically a very upset tree. And since chainsaws haven't yet been invented, I'm going to go with a rifle. Because screw getting close to that thing. Okay, I know what you're going to say, and I agree. Trust me, I'm with you on this one. They have taken liberties with exactly how quickly you are able to load and fire a flintlock musket. But if you look at what happens when he pulls the trigger on the flintlock pistol, that was pretty good actually. You notice that there was the flash as the charge went off in the pan, which was then followed by the shot going off. So that at least was quite accurate.
Are you wounded?
I'm well. Your lessons have proven effective.
I've never seen a beast this size. It's quite extraordinary.
Cousin, what a fight. You were illustrious.
I'm not of the same mind. I had the feeling it was already weakened. I did nothing more than finish it off.
Your humility remains a constant. But believe me, that battle was absolutely epic.
You know, overall, I'd have to say I'm quite enjoying Greedfall. I mean, comparisons with games like the Witcher franchise are going to be inevitable, and for good reason. There are some very obvious parallels and similarities. You've got the mix of high fantasy with low fantasy, you've got magic, you've got monsters, you've got medieval technology. The parallels are obvious. And while it isn't really fair to say, with only 7 hours of gameplay under my belt, but if pressed, I would be forced to say that I don't think Greedfall is as good as the Witcher series, particularly not the Witcher 3. The game's not perfect. There are issues. Of course there are issues. There are some texture problems. On one occasion, the ground disappeared as I was running around Serene, but saving and reloading the save file fixed that problem. There are occasional issues with character models clipping through the clothing, but I can forgive this sort of thing. I mean, you had that in Red Dead Redemption 2 at certain points, and, well, nobody knows exactly how much Red Dead Redemption 2 cost to make, but Grand Theft Auto 5 had a reported budget of $265 million, and Red Dead 2 almost certainly cost more, and they still had character clipping, so, you know. So it doesn't really seem fair to single out Greedfall and point the finger at it for character clipping when it was almost certainly made for a fraction of that kind of budget. At times the voice acting can also be a little bit hit and miss. You see, the thing about voice acting is that you only really notice it when it's either very, very good. For example, Mass Effect 1, 2 and 3, Grand Theft Auto 5, Knights of the Old Republic, anything with Jennifer Hale in it for that matter, the Uncharted series. When there's really good voice acting, you notice. When there's really bad voice acting, you notice as well. Most of the time, the voice acting is just something that's there. It's neither great nor terrible. And most of the time, that's the voice acting in Greedfall. It's just stuff that happens. But occasionally, it's so bad. There's an example in particular that I'm thinking of. It's a native merchant. I've noticed that in fantasy games of this type, they did this in The Witcher, they did it in Kingdom Come Deliverance. Everybody seems to... Anytime you have a fantasy or medieval game, and they want to have somebody who sounds like a peasant in the English language versions of the game. I've no idea what it's like in other languages. That peasant always sounds as if he comes from Birmingham. Or Somerset. Somewhere down in the West Country, where they're all called Zoyman, and they all drink Zoider. Or occasionally, lately we've been seeing some Geordie accents creep in from the northeast of England. But, I get it. I don't object to this. I think it adds a lot of flavour to the game. But every now and then you get a voice actor who has a very strange idea of what one of those accents should sound like.
Can you help me? Bertir too mad on Olmenawi. Why are you dressed like this?
Hello.
What?
I'm not one of your people. I'm the legate of the merchant congregation.
A legate? Is that someone important?
Indeed. I'm in charge of diplomatic relationships with other nations.
So you'll be able to help me. My chief sent me to trade some items with your village. But
What language is
there are
that?
these Bod Irony who do not want me to set up shop here.
These what?
Bod Irony, the Ironbacks, the warriors who protect this village. Every time I come, they take my items without giving me anything in exchange. Please, I don't understand how things work here.
Very well. Stay here. I'll try to clear this up.
Adlo Redar on Olmenawi. May the earth always be sturdy under your footsteps.
It's as if they've hired a guy to do the voice acting for that particular role who isn't a native English speaker but speaks pretty good English and has watched enough British TV shows to know that not everybody in England speaks the same way. He's just a little bit confused as to exactly which accent he wants to do. I mean, at times he sounds like he's from Somerset. At other times he sounds like he's from Romania. And at other times he sounds like he's Irish. All at the same time. It's one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard in a game. Or then again, I mean, maybe they're actually being a lot more clever than I'm giving them credit for. Because the voice actor isn't portraying somebody from the home counties or Somerset or Dublin. He's portraying an elf, somebody for whom English isn't his native language. And if you were a non-native English speaker who'd only picked up English from speaking to traders and colonists, maybe that's exactly what you would sound like. Who are we to say that he wouldn't? I mean, how many non-native English-speaking elves do we know? So maybe that's exactly what they should sound like. I guess all I'm really saying here is that if you're going to make up what something should sound like, just at least try to not make it sound stupid. There are millions upon millions of native English speakers in the world, and any one of them could have listened to that and just told you, yeah, I see what you're going for, but you probably need to rethink that one. But on the whole, these are very minor complaints, and they're really more amusing than annoying. The meat and bones of the game, the character interaction, the game world, and above all the quests are very, very good. Admittedly, I haven't been playing the game much, it's only been out a day. But of the 7 or so hours that I've sunk into the game so far, I haven't found the quests to be repetitive at all. There's very little of that obvious make-work kind of quest, where the developers have kind of run out of ideas, but they need to keep you occupied for an hour or so, so just have the character take Object X from point A to point B. Toss in some random encounters along the way to give them some combat, just to flesh things out a bit. There's very little of that in the game. The quests are usually quite inventive, and there's almost always more than one, in fact, usually more than 2 or 3 ways of doing them. So my overall first impressions of Greedfall, I'd have to say I'm quite impressed. I've certainly been enjoying playing it. And while it's not as good as The Witcher 3, but what games are as good as The Witcher 3? Being almost as good as The Witcher is a claim that a lot of games wish they could make. And you know what, Greedfall developers, on the off chance that you're actually watching this video, first of all, well done on making a great game. And you can quote me. Put it in your advertising. Greedfall. Almost as good as The Witcher 3. The Mighty Jingles, 2019. You can have that one for free. Your game is really good. It deserves to succeed. I hope it does. And I hope as a result of watching this video, you'll pick up a few more players. who will hopefully enjoy a game as much as I have. I mean, I realise I've barely scratched the surface of this huge game, which is why this is more of a first impressions video than an actual review, but the game's definitely showed me enough from the first 7 hours of gameplay that I want to know what happens next. I'm keen to see where I can take this character, and I'm keen to get out and explore more of this new world. And on that note, I need to get this video put to bed and then get back into the game, because the town guards in the colony of New Serene are running a particularly vicious extortion ring. They've already murdered one of the local merchants for refusing to pay his protection money. The rest of the merchants are too scared to talk, so I've got one hell of an investigation job ahead of me, and I can't wait to crack on and find out who's responsible. So if you want to see any more, you're just going to have to buy the game for yourself, aren't you? Available on Steam as of yesterday. I've got some heads to crack. Maybe once you've caught up with my progress, you can compare notes with me down in the comments below. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.